Mic check. Right, Lim Charlie. Let's do this. Welcome. It is the 12th of August, 2022, and this is the SitRep, the situation report, where I go through what the f is going on. Honestly, every single morning I get up, drink coffee, look at my news stories, and scratch my head going like, what is actually happening here? What is happening in the world at the moment? It's crazy. Anyway, this is a situation report where I go through news articles that I've found interesting over the past 24 hours and talk about it from the perspective of prepping. So welcome. Thank you for joining me, whether you be on Instagrams, on the YouTube, or listening to my smooth dulcet tones on a podcast on many of the podcast downloading applications, wherever you get your podcasts. All right, let's jump into it today. What have we got happening in the world? All right, let's start off in our neck of the woods. This is really my neck of the woods because this is the ACT, the Australian Capital Territory. What's happening in the Australian Capital Territory? They're planning to phase out petrol and diesel cars by 2035. No big surprise there. Following suit with what's happening in Europe at the moment, where they've put big bans on them. You look at this sort of stuff, and so we're pushing into this electronic vehicle sort of thing, which is great and dandy. I love the idea of it. There are a couple of problems, though. The theory and the reality don't match up, which, if we look at the average sort of, what would you call them? Left-leaning human being, progressive type chap, liberal, perhaps, minded people, which, I don't exclude myself from that. I would say that at least part of my thinking is quite liberal in many ways. But there's this idea of this utopian society that if we all just band together and just do the right thing and do these things, then everything's going to be fine. However, there are these other things, these other forces, which I call reality, which bump up against this. And this is definitely one of them. We can't just switch to EVs. It's not going to work. The technology that we have at this stage isn't going to support this. Or at least it's not going to fix all the problems. Let's put the problem to the, let's just put a pin on it that we can all have EV cars for starters. We can't. Okay, that's not going to work. We don't have the resources to build enough batteries for this, but it's going to rapidly change how we do things, i.e. charging time for just for starters. Are people going to be able to factor in that time spent, half an hour, 2 hours, whatever it's going to take to recharge your vehicle? Maybe they can, maybe they can't. I don't know, but it's just going to rapidly change how we do business, how we do things on a day-to-day sort of, pattern of life, I guess. Can people afford to do that time-wise sort of thing? Maybe. I don't know. Can we pull enough, say, I don't know, lithium out of the ground in order to create these batteries? I don't know. I don't think so. Personally, I don't think we can. Is the appetite there for people to do it? I don't know. The one indicator that I'm always looking at is the Australian ute market. So for those of you who aren't in Australia, and I say the word ute, you might be scratching your head right now going, what? Utility vehicle. So most people around the world, if I say utility vehicle, you're thinking of an SUV. You're thinking of your RAV4 or, you kind of like little compact four-wheel drive-ish type car. That ain't it. All right. It's a pickup truck. In Australia, we don't call them pickup trucks. We call them utes, short for utility vehicle. So your pickup truck type vehicle, hugely popular in Australia, massively popular. In fact, I would be shocked if it's not the most popular vehicle in Australia, or has at least one of the largest percentages in Australia. I'm pretty sure that the Ford Ranger might have been the highest selling car last year. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, it is massively popular, and I own a ute, and I have just purchased a new ute, and it is diesel. Fiend. But I was actually looking into an EV car. I'm interested in renewable resources. I'm interested in being less reliant on outside inputs, i.e. diesel or petrol products. So I thought, maybe I can get ahead of the curve here and get myself an EV ute. No, I can't. It is extremely difficult to do this in Australia. So I've done a little bit of research, and apparently the companies who can put out EV utes are saying, no, we're not going to do it in Australia. We've market tested the shit out of it. Aussies don't have the appetite for it for a number of reasons, and they don't list those reasons. But where I've done a little bit of digging and asked around, I think it is around range, which shouldn't be a problem, really. Not many people are going to be driving more than 450 Ks in a go, and that's what the manufacturers say that these vehicles can do. Capability should be fine unless we're talking about towing capacity, and then it gets into a gray area. But for just raw power, these EV utes should be fine for Aussies. What we've got is recharge time. So that's probably where the issue is coming in, I think. Anyway, Ford has stuck to their guns and said the Ford F-150 Lightning, the electronic version of their very popular F-150 pickup truck, not coming to Australia. They've got no plans to bring it to Australia at all. They have put out some hints that they might go to a hybrid version of the Ranger, the very popular Ranger in Australia. But just hints. Who else is in this space? We have Tesla with the Cybertruck. Well, they've turned around and they have said last month that they are refunding all the pre-purchase orders or the deposits that are put down by Australians for the Cybertruck, i.e. they have pretty much indicated that it's not coming to Australia. So this sort of stuff here where this was coming from NRMA Insurance, of all people, have said that ACT planning on increasing their electronic vehicles, that they're phasing out all petrol and diesel vehicles by 2035. I mean, it's a bit of time away. I can see this actually happening. It's, not beyond the realms of possibility. And especially I can see it happening within Canberra because they could set up the infrastructure for electronic charging stations within Canberra. It's a very small area. There's not a huge population. Could work here. However, Canberra's not just Canberra. It is surrounded by New South Wales. You've got people like myself who regularly drive into Canberra. Will that mean that I have to get a EV? I don't know if that's going to work. Anyway, that's the way they're heading. Good luck to them, I say. All right, let's jump over to Taiwan. What's the latest in Taiwan? The Chinese white paper has come out and said, hey, we're going to operate under a one China, two systems. So one country, two systems, which is kind of what they said they were going to do in Hong Kong as well. And by all indications, they did not. So probably rightly from the Taiwan side, they've said, no, we're going to reject that. Not having it. Not going to happen. Let's see what the fallout of that is. Again, I think that was never going to happen. It's just trying to, kind of pissing down everyone's back and telling them it's raining. At least they're saying nice things, if not doing nice things. Okay, let's jump all the way over to the Middle East now and have a look at Lebanon. So Lebanon's been in a financial collapse for at least 3 years now, since probably about 2019. A lot of problems that are going on there, but one of the big problems is that the individual punter can't get money out of the bank. They capped the amount of dollars or whatever the national currency is there that you can actually pull out of the bank at any given time, and what you can actually import back into the country if you leave the country, which obviously makes life hard. Overnight, they've had a hostage situation where a man has walked into a bank with reports are saying a shotgun and a jerry of petrol. Not sure what he's going to do with that. Burn the place down, maybe. But has demanded that they allow him to take money, his own money out. That's the thing about this. People have money in the bank, they just can't get it out. The government said, no, people cannot get more than, I think it was, well, last time I checked, $400 a week out. Allegedly, this individual here has a very sick father. He cannot pay for the medical needs of his father, so decided to go a little bit more extreme. So that's what we're seeing there. Peter Rouse on YouTube just said, shotgun in China? Impossible. No, it's a shotgun in Lebanon. This person is in Lebanon, not China. There is also a crisis going on in China, which is sort of in a similar vein at the moment, a banking crisis going on in China. And, a lot of things going on there. I will touch on this actually because it's quite interesting. I'm going to do a little bit more research on this today. But China, the entire economic system looks like it's on the verge of collapse based around the property market, which is a huge bubble, a bubble to the likes we've never seen before. It is massive and it is ripe to explode or collapse, really, implode. And what's instigating it at the moment is individuals who are in protest refusing to pay mortgages now. So a lot of bad stuff going on in China. But what I'm talking about here is not about China. This is Lebanon and the Lebanon crisis that they've been in for a couple of years now. So yeah, that's what we're seeing. Massive issues here. This actually has been resolved. I don't have the story in front of me, but I did read this just before I went live today, this morning, that this has resolved. The person has handed themselves in, has capitulated because they agreed. They said, yes, we will let you pull this money out and use it to pay for your sick father who is dying at the moment without medical aid, which needs to be paid for. And then the latest report I saw on it was he has been arrested, and his lawyer has come out and said the money actually wasn't given. So they agreed. They said, "Yep, all right, fine. We'll pull the money out. We'll give it to your father or to the hospital to pay for your father's medical bills." They arrested him and then didn't do that. So not good. Not good. The reason I'm putting this sort of story out is like a big thing about prepping is financial prepping, and part of financial prepping is not just having a good budget and having all your financial side in order. It's also having cash on hand. It's also having money outside of the system, outside of the bank. I'm not saying pull all your money out of the bank and put it under your mattress. I'm just saying have some cash. Definitely have some cash for emergencies. That's a good lesson there. All right, let's jump down to Africa now. So Sierra Leone, a little bit more information about that crackdown on the riots that are happening there, the protestings that are happening there, and what that's all about. So we've got costs of living going through the roof in Sierra Leone, and that's essentially what they're saying that these protests are about. Essentially the cost of living, but the economic situation as a whole in Sierra Leone. So, quote, "The economic situation in the country is really bad. The government says it is due to Ukraine and coronavirus crisis, but to date, youth unemployment is very high. There are a lot of disgruntled young people in the country. There was recently a big spike in fuel prices, products, and commodities. The president says he doesn't have quick fixes, but as an entrepreneur, things were hard before Ukraine and the coronavirus." So essentially, what we're seeing, or what I'm reading from what's happening in Sierra Leone at the moment, is a crunched, extreme version of what's happening all over the world. We had a shitty situation. We had things that were really on wood, like it was a house of cards back in 2019. And now we've had coronavirus. And then you could make the argument, and I often do make this argument, that shutting down world's economies for 2.5 years pushes some countries to the brink, to the point where they have to act, i.e. they might have to invade a neighbor, i.e. Russia has to invade Ukraine. And maybe we will see China has to invade Taiwan. So that then creates a very convenient excuse for governments to go, oh, it's coronavirus's fault and we had to do this. And Russia and Putin, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, no, you pretty much stuffed all this up way before that. This just expedited that issue. This just made it a lot worse. So that's what we're seeing here in Sierra Leone. And the government is saying, oh, no, it's not our fault. It's coronavirus. It's Putin, blah, blah, blah. And you've got a perfect storm here. You've got youth unemployment. And so let me just backpedal here. When I'm talking about issues, when I'm teaching courses, when I'm teaching people, hey, when you're out in an environment, you're looking around, one of the things I say to look out for is demographics. And essentially what you're looking out for in demographics is fighting age males between the age of 18 and 25 or 35, depends on who you're asking. This sort of, no, it doesn't come out of that. Although this is a good book, Gift of Fear. This book here, this will be incorrect for those of you who are watching backwards, back to front, but this is called Left of Bang by Patrick Van Horn and Jason A. Riley. This is where this sort of information comes from, looking out into an environment and trying to pick threats, fighting age males. So you've got youth unemployment here. You've got a lot of angry young men who are statistically more likely to be violent in any given situation. That is a statistical fact. Those young males, they're going to do that. They've got nothing else to do. They've got nothing to lose. They've got no jobs. They're unemployed, and things are getting more and more expensive. Peter Rouse says, don't discount us 50-plus-year-olds. That's right. I like to teach it that, a fighting age male is between the age of 18 and 40, just so I can pretend that I've still got it. I'm still in the game. I'm still in the fight. But, yeah, it definitely deteriorates after 25. Yeah, so, that's essentially what they're seeing here and what CNN here is reporting on that's coming out of Sierra Leone. And this is the sort of thing that we could quite easily see in our countries, in Australia. If we start to see youth unemployment increase, we start to see cost of living continue to increase. These are the sorts of things that we could see quite easily. Probably not to this level, and maybe not a government crackdown to this level. But here is one government crackdown that I do want to warn you about. And as a prepper or somebody who's preparing for uncertain futures, and especially ones based around what government responses might be, this is certainly something that you really need to think about. Sierra Leone shuts off internet access to crush cost of living protests, which is a growing tactic around the world. This is something that governments are known to do, and this is something that governments have been doing with increased frequency over the past couple of years as we've seen more and more protests. They shut the internet down. They have the ability to do it. In fact, foreign countries have the ability to shut other countries' internet down, sometimes temporarily, sometimes permanently. But this is what happens. Hey, we don't want this information getting out. Shut the internet down. We don't want people congregating and organizing themselves. Shut the internet down. So start to think about that. How can you operate without the internet right now? Are you totally dependent on the internet? And just to think about how this extends out, what in your daily life do you utilize the internet for? Is it communication? Most probably. Is it even sourcing food and things like that, ordering things online? Probably. If you're listening to this, then probably you are the kind of person who will buy things online. I certainly am. I'm not casting any shade on that. I do it myself. But you need to also think about this. How can I do that outside of that? Are you sort of person who uses the internet to pay for things regularly, i.e. tap with your phone? Are you the sort of person who entertains themselves through the internet? This is one thing that I've been thinking about lately. I've been buying, building up my library of books so that I'm not totally reliant on the internet for information. I've been building up my entertainment, my physical entertainment. So board games, Dungeons and Dragons. I've been getting back into it. It's been years and I'm back in it. Love it. It's great fun. Anyway, these are the sorts of things you might want to think about. Peter Rouse, have you seen the average 18 to 25-year-olds these days? Not exactly physical specimens. Couldn't agree more. In our part of the worlds, it is a sad state of affairs if you're looking at 18 to 25-year-olds nowadays. They're not great. All right, what else is happening in the world? Let's jump to Europe now. A couple little stories. Ban on export of firewood comes into force in Hungary. I've reported on this before, but especially when we're thinking about Germany. Germany's going to struggle this winter. So there's been a run on things like wood fire heaters and wood, and they're in very, very short supply right now in Germany. And so other countries that surround Germany, like Hungary, have been saying, no, we're not exporting any firewood to you guys. I think maybe they should try and look north to the Scandinavian countries, but see what happens there. Jersey's largest veggie producer stops growing food. Yeah, that's a pretty big deal. They're citing spiraling operational costs as the reason. They produce 80% of Jersey's fresh vegetables. Now the island depends on UK produce and may see shortages of fresh vegetables, particularly in the winter months. Again, more food shortages, more issues in our food supply chain, more reason for us to try and grow our own stuff and bring that food supply on that food supply chain from out there to in here, bring it as locally as possible, even into our own backyards if possible, but into local farmers, into the local area, into local community gardens and things like that. All right, let's jump to America now. So this was a big one that jumped into me. So that whole Trump debacle with the FBI raiding Trump's place. Whatever you think about that aside, there will be a pendulum swing from that. There'll be an effect from that. Every action has an equal and opposite reaction. And what the reaction from this is, Trump supporters who are generally right, on the right side of, not correct, but left and right side of politics, they're probably going to have some sort of reaction from this side now. So what we're going to see is increased potential violence within the US, more riots, more protests, because as those right and ultra-right people hit the streets and let their voices be known, you're going to get the reaction then from the left. Is it called alt-left? Is there an alt-left? Or is it just alt-right? Is the left so whack in of itself that you don't need to call it alt-left? It's just left is a given that it's a pretty crazy people. Already false flag attacks at the FBI office. Yes, there was a FBI office in Cleveland, Ohio. This is from Peter Rouse on YouTube. I believe it was Cleveland, Ohio. I could be incorrect in that somebody allegedly tried to gain entry, was pushed off their target there and fired shots on their way out. A little bit of a run and gun on an FBI office. So we're already seeing it. We're already seeing what's happening there. I don't know if that's false flag or not, but there was definitely something that happened at an FBI office in the US. So watch that space. My prediction there is, again, increased civil unrest within the US of A. So if you're watching this from the US of A, keep your eyes open when you're out and about today. Also in the US, more food pain. Shocking. There appears to be a fire at a food facility, and it's burnt to the ground. Yet another one. So this one's in Baltimore this time. Graincraft that has just acquired a Baltimore-based Redwood Capital Investments. That doesn't make any sense. Graincraft announced it had been acquired, by Baltimore-based Redwood Capital Investments. So another investment company gobbled up a food company here, Graincraft, within, where are they? Doesn't actually say where they are. I would imagine maybe in Baltimore. Anyway, 60 days later, or within 60 days of being acquired, burnt to the ground. I'm sure that's not an insurance scam at all. But there it is. Yet another food attack within the US. Some crazy stuff going on there. Lots of stuff burning to the ground. Lots of issues. But again, what can we do as individuals? just comes back to it. We need to try and bring our food supply back as close to home as possible. As close to home as possible. All right, so that's it for all the stories today. I just want to touch on something, open up a little bit of discussion, and get people thinking about this. This was sent in from one of my Instagram friends, Uhtred, son of Uhtred. Asked a question. They were going to put this up on the SitRep yesterday, but didn't, and so I thought I'll put it up on the SitRep today for people to think about and discuss, if they will. We're always talking about moving out of the cities, but what about renting? Can they just kick you out of what you are, or what about buying? And then do you have a massive mortgage? So what we're talking about here is essentially looming financial crisis. People maybe not being able to pay mortgages, people maybe not being able to pay rent, thinking about cost of living being an issue. So what do we do as individuals? If we live in the city, we're renting, or if we buy a house, we've got mortgage, we need things that need to be repaid. So my dog is just, what are you into over there? Don't eat that. Don't get out of it. So, we've got this financial collapse that we're potentially looking at. What's going to happen if people can't service their mortgages? Are banks going to kick people out wholesale? Banks going to kick people out wholesale. And then Uhtred, son of Uhtred, goes on here to say, actually, as I'm writing this, it doesn't make sense. They couldn't probably kick out 95% of the people. Well, you're right. I don't think they can kick 95% of the people out. I think there will be mitigating measures put in there. I think government will step in order to stop this sort of wholesale kick out of people. But there will be a lot of pain here, especially when we're thinking about the initial part. As interest rates increase, there's going to be people who are already on that tenuous line between being able to pay their mortgage and feed themselves and their children, and they're going to have to forfeit on their mortgages and their loans. Where'd that dog go? So quiet and sneaky. Anyway, but this is actually something that can happen. It's something that we do need to think about. And if you're in that sort of position where you're like, ooh, I can pay rent or I can pay a mortgage right now, but I don't know how much longer I can continue to do that into the future, then this is a reality you really need to start thinking about. How can you put yourself in a better financial position? How can you situate yourself maybe in a place that is easier for you to pay in the long term? So if you're maybe in the city and you're paying $650 a week in rent, can you start to look at other suburbs where it is coming down? Can you even start to look at, hey, can I move out of the city? And that's what my recommendation is to people: get out of the cities. So this is something you need to start really thinking about. Can banks come in and take your home? Yes. The short answer is yes. Would they do it wholesale to everyone? No. The rough answer is no. It would not make financial sense for the bank to just wholesale kick 95% of people out. Although 95% of people wouldn't be kicked out. I would estimate that it would be somewhere in the order of 30 to 40% of people that probably couldn't pay back mortgages if interest rates continue going up and cost of living continue going up. Some interesting things to think about. All right, this is what I want you guys to go and research. If this is tickling you at the moment or causing a fear spike, like, hey, this might be me in this sort of situation, this is what I recommend you go out and research now. First off, depression. Go and look at what happened in the Depression. Look at what happened in Australia and New Zealand in the Depression. Look at what happened in the US in the Depression. Look at what happened in Germany between the years of 1910 or 1905 and 1939. So start of World War II. Look at what their economic situation was. Look at what happened there. Look at the hyperinflation situation that they had to battle through, and look at what happened with people's housing in particular. The next thing I want you to look at is really start to pay attention to what's happening in China right now. I alluded to this at the start, this financial crisis that's happening in China. I'm going to do a little bit more research on this today and hopefully talk about it a bit tomorrow. This could be potentially I've talked about this before. This could be the big thing. All right, because there's a number of things that can happen in countries financial-wise that can cause downturns. And yes, the US is in recession, but no, it's not, according to Uncle Joe. All that can be fudged over, all that can be saved, all that can be moved. One thing that cannot be moved and cannot be shifted and cannot be changed is if China's property market collapses. It's going to take everyone, all of us, down with it. So this is something that you want to think about as well. From the perspective here of wilderness survival, right? One of our tenets, our hierarchy of survival needs is shelter. In fact, it's one of the big ones. Shelter. It is important how we house ourselves, where we live, what our protection is from the elements. These sorts of things you really need to put a bit of thought into, a bit of forethought, having backups to this, having things like, well, what happens? Plan out these what ifs now. What if the bank does foreclose on my house? What if me and my family are forced to move out of my house because the interest rates in the next month go from 5% to 10% to 28%? Can you afford 28% interest? I would suggest no. Not many people can. But this is potentially what could happen. In order to save the economy, as the Reserve Bank sees it, they are very willing to sacrifice individuals. And if you're one of those people that is living anywhere even close to that line of not being able to pay back your mortgage or not being able to pay rent, you're going to be on the sacrificial chopping block. So that's the sort of stuff that I want you to think about. It was a great question there from Uhtred, son of Uhtred. Really appreciate that. And it's really something we need to think about it. The summation of this, of what they were asking was, what is the most secure position for us to be in the collapse? Obviously, not everyone can afford their own property outright. What's our legitimate options? The most secure option, in my opinion, is to have some rural property, even if you have to go in with other people to do that. And that's what most of us will have to do. But have some sort of land. Land, in my opinion, is the foundational wealth of our civilization. They will tell you, our society will tell you everything else. They will get you to believe anything else but that. But in my opinion, if you have land, you have wealth. Everything else is by orders extracted away from that wealth. With land, you can grow. You can grow food. You can grow trees, so you can build shelter. You can house yourself. You can have livestock. You can hunt, potentially. Land is the foundation of that. Everything else stems from that. So that's what I would be aiming towards if I was you. And then on top of that, start to build the homesteading mindset. That's how you can future-proof yourself, in my opinion, the most. And that's certainly what I'm trying to do. And that's what I'm trying to teach people. Self-reliant human beings, homesteading human beings, working in community, local community. That's the cap. All right. That's what I'm thinking. And move away from the banks. But, even if you own your own home in Australia, you're essentially still renting because you're going to be paying a council rates. I am currently waiting on a DA, and I've been waiting for a very long time. And I still have to pay rates to my council as if I own a house, as if I'm shitting into a toilet and I'm using sewage, even though I'm not. There's nothing there on that freaking land, and I still have to pay these rates. So I'm still renting, as it were, to the government, even if you own. But rural land, you start to move away from that a little bit. Those rates come down and you start to become further away from that. That's about the best you can get, apart from living like some sort of crazy wilderness man out in a national park somewhere. Mark Stoney Wilcox says, I bought my house in 2019. I paid cash, and thank God I didn't spend my on unnecessary stuff. Yes. Very clever. Very clever. That's what you want to do. All right, gang, that's it for today. I really appreciate everyone joining me again. hopefully there was something helpful in my ramblings today. If not, maybe tomorrow. We'll try again tomorrow. As I said, really start to think about these sorts of things, really start to think about how we can set ourselves up as best as possible for the uncertain future that's coming. And certainly one of the things that we're going to be facing is a decrease in our supply of food and an increase in the cost of food. So that's a good place to start. Stay safe wherever you are out there in the world. Remember to keep prepping, keep those stocks up, keep building your stores and building the fat into the system so that we can become more of the asset if something does go rapidly wrong and not the liability. So until next time, stay safe. Thank you all very much. I really appreciate it for joining me. And Semper Paratus.